So hello, in this video I will be showing how to use JenkinsX and Activity Cloud, and for that I will be doing a quick recap on our trending topic campaigns blueprint that we have in Activity Cloud. You can check this out in our Gitbook. Quickly, just to review what's the scenario that we are trying to cover here. It's basically representing a marketing company that wants to start creating campaigns around trending topics based on these different social media feeds, right? So the main idea is that if it's a global company, you should be enable different departments around the world to write these campaigns in different languages and to just cover different trending topics that might be very, very specific for the country where they are operating in. But the infrastructure and the interaction between the different components that we are going to code in here should be the same for all the campaigns. They all should be able to rank interactions, user interactions with these campaigns, and then a reward service, to make sure that there is an engagement with the users that are engaged with that campaign. Also, we are going to consume only like the Twitter feed that we are just mocking up in our component. We tested with also like the live Twitter feed, but the main idea of this scenario is to be able to support different feeds, right? Multiple feeds at the same time and to deal with all of them in the same way. So the solution that we are proposing here should be able to scale to global scale and also to support different languages in different locations and all of these features. So what I will be demonstrating here is how to get the components for this scenario up and running in AWS. Okay, so doing this demo, I've already installed JenkinsX in AWS by following the instructions provided in the JenkinsX site, and I've also put some notes here in this blog post about how I did it and what kind of things did I find in there and some of my special parameters. I totally recommend you to try that out if you have access to an AWS cluster. If you don't, try GCE. They give you a free trial with $300, I think, for you to test Kubernetes clusters in there, so you can just go and use that if you haven't used it yet. You can also try Minikube. It's not really recommended. I mean, it's okay, it will work, but the main problem is that it's not a real cluster, and I totally recommend you to go and test it in a real cluster. So the first thing that you should be able to do is go to our activity organization in GitHub. This is Activity, GitHub Activity, and you can then search all the repositories associated with these trending topic campaigns blueprint. You will find 5 components in here. These are 5 services that you will need to deploy in order to make this scenario work. And of course, there is no restrictions on order. These are microservices. These are completely independent. So basically, you can start by any of those. And definitely, we will start with this runtime bundle campaign. This is the project that contains a process runtime, and it also contains our process definitions that we want to deploy and run the campaigns with. You can go and take a look at the description about how these processes are working and what these processes are doing. We have 2 process definitions here. One specific for the campaign and the other one for the rewards and for the prices. So I would totally recommend you to not use this source code here if you want to change it, right? And this is the main idea of doing this exercise. You should be able to change this project and apply the changes and then keep track of what you are doing. So I would totally recommend you to fork it. So I'm forking it into my own user so I can change it, and then JenkinsX can keep track of my changes, not the changes that we applied in the activity organization, right? So the next thing that you should do, you should be able to clone this locally. So I will create a blueprint directory where I will just put all these projects. cd blueprint clear. Then I can clone this repository in there, right? So now I have it here. Because this is just a Maven Spring Boot application, you can just run it locally, right? So clean install, and you should be able to, this should be okay. And also you should be able to do mvn Spring Boot run, and just get it up and running. Remember that this has a process runtime in it, so it depends on PostgreSQL to be somewhere, installed somewhere, or like a database, right? The default configuration is going to go to Postgre, and it will fail to start because Postgre is not there, right? In a real environment, or even in my environment, I will need to have that PostgreSQL running for this to work correctly, right? And we don't have it there, so, and we will not have it in our AWS cluster, so we'll need to make sure to make those configurations. From the JenkinsX perspective, the next thing that you should do is you should import this into Jenkins, and you do that with JX import. Yes. So basically what is this doing is importing the project and creating some Git hooks into the repository so it can keep track of the changes. So now if you go here to Jenkins, you should be able to see that there is a new pipeline for this project, and this pipeline is going to be triggered. This pipeline is going to build the project. We can go and take a look at that build while it's starting. And basically what is this going to do is it's going to clone my repository, the one that I forked. It's going to do a Maven build, like clean install, right? So it will just build everything. It will deploy the artifacts to Nexus. Then it will proceed to create a Docker image for this service. So it will wrap my Spring Boot application in a Docker image. It will publish that Docker image in a Docker registry. Next, it's going to create the Helm chart for this service, and it will publish that into Chart Museum. And finally, it's going to push into the staging repository of JenkinsX the deployment for this service via using the Helm chart that was published in Helm, in Chart Museum, and it will start that service in that environment, right? And we can check all that, and this will be automatically done by the Jenkins pipeline. So we can take a look at this pipeline while it's building and it's deploying stuff. But while it's doing that, we can go back to the terminal and we can just change environments, right? So we were in the dev environment because we wanted to import this project initially. We can now switch to the staging environment. In the staging environment, we can check with kubectl get pods, right? We don't have any because this pipeline is still building our service, right? In the meantime, what we can be doing is we can start looking into the environment, into the staging environment, because in the same way that this application was failing here when I tried to deploy it, it will fail when I try to deploy it into the Kubernetes cluster, right? Because there is no PostgreSQL available in that environment. So in order to check that, I will open a new terminal here, and we should be able to go to our home directory, where there is a directory that's called JX. This JX directory has a list of environments, so we can go to our environment, my user, because the environment is set up in my user, and we will be looking at this environment here. This is the environment that I have created, and this is the environment where my service is going to be deployed. So I can do environment here, staging, right? So what do I have here is the requirements file. So if you cat m requirements, you should be able to see that there are two things, basically an expose controller. So if we deploy a service there, is automatically exposed to the outside world and we can access it from my environment here in my laptop, and some cleanups jobs there. But here is where it's going to be also my service, and also here we should be putting like PostgreSQL. Because Activity Cloud uses asynchronous messaging for triggering connector system-to-system interactions, we are also need to add RabbitMQ in here, so these components can interact between each other. So in order to do that, what are we going to basically do? It's we need to edit this. First of all, we do git pull, just to see that everything is up to date locally. And then we are going to edit this requirement file. And I will copy here from the notes some of the charts that will enable us to have PostgreSQL and RabbitMQ, right? So we have here, going to add two things. This is basically going to tell the environment to deploy RabbitMQ, an instance of RabbitMQ and an instance of PostgreSQL by using their Helm charts, their respective Helm charts. Another thing that we will need to do, that I think that I've already done here, it's edit the values. And the values basically are adding just these two things, which are kind of like important, like the username and password. This can be done in a completely different way as well. Just to not expose your password here in a plain file. I'm not going to cover how to deal with secrets in JenkinsX, but you can, of course. And basically we are just setting up, okay, so what's the passwords for these two things? So then when we deploy a service like the one that we are deploying now, it knows how to connect with that, right? So this is just the default values. Of course, you can change that, you can deal that with that as a secret and all of that. So I will just add this in my changes. Now we can see that the requirements file YAML file was modified. So I will just git commit this, adding PostgreSQL and Rabbit. I will push this, right? Basically, this is going to trigger a new pipeline now that it's going to be run on top of our environment, this staging environment. And we will see that this pipeline is going to deploy these new services using Helm and their respective Helm charts into the staging environment, right? So as soon as this pipeline is finished, we should be able to see that now we have Postgre and RabbitMQ available in there. So as soon as the other pipeline building our service finished, we should be able to see that there is that service up and running, connecting to Postgre and to RabbitMQ. So if we go back here, JX env, so JX, let's look at the pods, nothing there, nothing there. We just need to wait for this to find an agent to build this source code and to check that the environment is correct. Okay, so finally the pipeline succeed, like the runtime bundle English campaign succeed. So that's done, and also we can quickly check that the environment one also finished. It also finished, and we can see here in the output that now we have PostgreSQL, RabbitMQ, and also our service deployed there. So here you can do kubectl get pods as well again, and you will see the 3 services. This one is still starting, but we can do JX logs in order to check that this application is being deployed and it's already up and running, right? So the next thing that you can do is you can quickly check the URL for this application, and you can do that with JX get apps. You will get that URL there up and running, and then of course that you can do curl. That one, it's still deploying, so it's still Kubernetes is checking in order to enable the service, but it's going to be up and running in any second. We can go here, check the last deployed artifact, and you will find here that the service is going to come up at any time. That's it, done. So now you have your service up and running. You can clearly see that it was connecting to PostgreSQL and also to RabbitMQ, because you can see there the channels and the topics that were used in order to do that. So now I'm going to repeat the same process for all the other repositories, all the cloud connectors. I will fork them and I will clone them in this directory, and then I will import them into JenkinsX. Okay, so I forked all the other connector repositories from the Activiti organization. They are now inside my user account. I cloned them locally into my blueprint directory. So if I go to the blueprint directory, right, so I have all the connectors plus the runtime bundle campaign. And now I've imported them all into JenkinsX after doing that. So we can go to JenkinsX, which is here, and we can check how many projects do we have, right? So I've imported them all. So all the initial pipelines were triggered. And as soon as this pipeline finished, and also as soon as the staging environment pipeline finished with the changes by adding all the services in there, we should be able to have everything up and running in our AWS environment. That's running now, and we should be able to check if it's working or not. Okay, so after all the pipeline finished, we should have all the services up and running in our staging environment. So we can go and check how much did it take to finish each of the pipelines, and now we should also be able to see here that we have all the services up and running. We are just getting all the pods, and you can see that there is 1 campaign, 4 connectors up and running. The next thing that you can do is you can do JX get apps, and you should be able to get the URLs to access each of these services, right? So in order to go and access to the, for example, the dummy tweet, we will just copy this URL. We will just go to Postman. We can send a GET request, right? So that's the dummy service. We can send a request to the feed. The feed is not running, so in order to start it, we need to send a post request. Okay, so feed is start. Now, what's going on? So we are sending tweets. The campaign is picking up some of the tweets that are matching with the campaign topic, and then based on that we are ranking the users that are engaging with those campaigns, and then triggering a reward process every minute, as far as I remember. So we can check what's going on in the services by doing JX logs. And for example, we can see the campaign. So it's saying, okay, I'm receiving tweets, some of them match, some of them doesn't match. But then we can also check the rewards, for example, on the ranking. JX logs, ranking. Okay, so we are ranking authors here based on the level of engagements in the campaign. And remember that we are also doing some sentiment analysis, and that sentiment analysis also categorize, the rank between positive and negative. Finally, we can just do JX logs on rewards. And then here you can see that some rewards are being sent for the activity campaign. In this case, all the tweets that contains the activity word in it, and this is the top 3 of the users that are engaging with that, right? So we have these users at this point. Rewards will be, triggered again after a minute or so, and tweets will keep coming in, right? Here you can see the ranking, and also, of course, you can again get apps, check the rankings by just going straight to the ranking service, right? The main idea is to make sure that you can create fully automated campaigns where there is no intervention from the user here. So there is no endpoint there, but if you go to rank activity, you should be able to see, what's the top ranked user for this campaign in this case. So that's pretty much it. I totally recommend you to check JenkinsX.io. Check the quick starter, how to get, the JX command line interface in order to interact, how to create a cluster, how to get started, and also I would recommend to check this presentation from KubeCon, where James was presenting JenkinsX to the Kubernetes community. From the activity side, you should be able to take a look at the blog, and I will be providing links to the blueprint explanation. We will be updating those documents to reflect, the JenkinsX configuration, and we will start creating quick starts that follow the same approach of this, right? If you are really interested in collaborating with us into creating these examples, you should be able to learn a lot in the process. So please get in touch, and see you soon. Bye-bye.